for your thoughts on Rudy Giuliani admitting that he made false statements. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. He said he lied. Now, Giuliani's lawyers were quick to emphasize it doesn't mean anything more than a legal move on Giuliani's part. But, you know, Michael, we heard that same quick to defend excuses from Bernie Kerik's lawyers after he turned over thousands of pages to special counsel Jack Smith.
Yes. So, look, Rudy Giuliani has been lying for Donald since the day that he became involved with him. You may recall with the infamous tape between myself and Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani came on television and he started talking about who made the statement about paying in cash. It was Donald, but he said it was me. And then he goes on to say, as a prosecutor, as a guy who ran the Southern District of New York, I've done thousands of these transcriptions and I listened to it. Rudy is a liar, plain and simple. And you know what? It's a shame because you start to see all of the names of the lawyers. I mean, that's what MAGA is. Make attorneys get attorneys, plain and simple.
Michael, Giuliani is a little long in the teeth. He's definitely not a spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination. You've said previously that you think that he would turn on Trump, that he would, quote, rat him out, to be precise. Do you think that there is some level of cooperation that's going on by and between Rudy Giuliani and special counsel Jack Smith?
Oh, I think there's a lot of cooperation going on between a lot of people. You know, Katie, I've actually said it on your show. I believe that Ivanka and Jared are cooperating. I believe Mark Meadows is cooperating. I believe Rudy Kaludi is cooperating. I believe all of them are cooperating. You see, the thing about history is that it tends to repeat itself. And all you have to do is look at me. Look at what happened to me to understand that Donald cares for no one or anyone, or anything for that matter, other than himself. And if they have any opportunity within which to save themselves from the pain that they saw me go through, then rest assured, they're providing information. They're providing testimony, documentary evidence, whatever they have, they're providing.
Michael, NBC actually had the chance to catch up with Mark Meadows, of all people, today, somebody who was an insider, certainly in the White House with Donald Trump. Take a quick listen.
You know, I don't talk about anything J6 related.
Mark Meadows looks to me like a federal witness under a cooperation agreement, and my guess is that's what we're going to find out he is.
You know, Michael Meadows is known as the guy who knows all, and I believe that, just like I believe he'd say, as in Meadows, would say what he needed to say to save his own hide. But do you agree with what Chris Christie said?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I happen to know Chris, and I think a lot. I think very highly of him, to be honest with you. I think he's a good guy. I don't think he has a chance as it relates to the GOP to get the nomination. But nevertheless, I think he's very honest and straightforward. And I do truly believe that he is accurate when it comes to Mark Meadows. I think that Meadows would be a fool, and he's probably not that stupid, not to provide whatever he has to protect himself, knowing that Donald will throw him under the bus, as he has done to so many other people before him.
At the beginning of this interview with you, I mentioned how accountability has hit many of Trump's lawyers. And when we saw that graphic, there were a number of them, like Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, and on and on. But accountability has actually hit you the hardest, Michael, as one of Trump's former counsel, as we sit here now. What goes through your mind when you see that parade of lawyers that are willing to use their law licenses to help somebody like Donald Trump?
Yeah, I sort of scratch my own head and say, how did I fall for it? My law license means so much to me, as it does, I'm sure, meaning to them. It was my, it was my livelihood. It was my reputation. It was the essence of who I am. And to have it taken simply because another man ends up having an affair with a porn star, and I simply, do a non-disclosure agreement, it's amazing to me that, I ended up losing it for something or someone as morally bankrupt as Donald. Why I did it? Again, I don't know, and I beat myself up over that every single day. I feel sorry for those who think that Donald will protect them. I feel sorry for them because they are going to learn the hard way, as I did, that again, Donald cares for no one or anything other than himself. And each and every one of them will be used to the fullest extent of Donald's ability. He will now start blaming things on the lawyers. Well, the lawyers told me to do it. Quite frankly, the lawyers told me. I'm not a lawyer. That's what I hired them for. And he's going to throw them under the bus, and they know it, and that's why they're all out there protecting themselves. And he's going to realize, meaning Donald is going to realize very, very soon exactly what it's like to be all alone on an island trying to defend yourself from what I do believe will be 4 indictments, 2 federal and 2 state.
Michael Trump, obviously, he wears his emotions on his sleeve as he's quick to demonize law enforcement and the DOJ, including Jack Smith. Privately, though, what is Donald Trump saying to the people in his immediate orbit about the prospect of actually doing jail time for his crimes?
Well, right now, I can assure you that he's panicking. He's panicking inside. He'll never allow the public to see it because he likes to give the appearance of strength and, be the victim, which is what he's going to continue to play. But Donald is right now, Petra, when he's alone in his Mar-a-Lago room, I assure you, he's thinking about just how bad this is going to be. First of all, you have Tish James' civil case, which is going to hit him in the pocket. That bothers him a lot. But then you have Alvin Bragg's case, which, again, is criminal. You're going to very soon have the indictment by District Attorney Fani Willis, and you're going to have 2 federal indictments as well. This is any one of these is overwhelming to any human being. So imagine now 4 with the full weight, the full power of prosecutors. And trust me, when I tell you this, it's in my book, Revenge. Prosecutors don't play fair. Their sole goal is to convict. And Donald has laid it out perfectly with everybody's text messages, with his own words. He's laid it out perfectly for a prosecutorial conviction.
Michael, I wanted to ask you, because we've had this conversation before offline as well as on my show, about the threats of violence and harm that Donald makes very reminiscent of a mob boss, very reminiscent of a mafioso, kind of getting other people to do the dirty work for him. Some of it maybe legally, some of it actually physical, as we saw on January 6th. It seems like the rhetoric is escalating, and he talks about how, quote, dangerous it would be if he were to actually be convicted and goes to prison. Do you think he's issuing yet another call to arms for the people that are stupid enough to follow his lead?
They're same people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, like Stuart Rhodes, who's doing 18 years for Donald Trump's, for his message, his latent message, to them. One of the things that I also heard a lot on all the various different news programs is that Jack Smith isn't worried about the idle threats of Donald Trump. I totally disagree. There are too many unhinged people in this country. Look at what they did on January 6th. Look at the way they attacked our police officers, Capitol Police. Look at how they went ahead. They were wanting to get their hands on Nancy Pelosi to kill her and to hang Mike Pence. Can you imagine if somehow they managed to get their hands on either of them? Could you imagine what it would look like, in America to the rest of the world? I mean, Donald Trump is issuing threats against Jack Smith, as he has done to every single person that he deems a threat, myself included. And I assure you, as tough as Jack Smith is, and as tough as people want to perceive him to be, Donald Trump's threats are not, just falling by the wayside.